Welcome to our shir, Parshas Mishpatim, Tafshin Pei Aleph, and once again, unfortunately, even though it's the Rosh Chodesh Adar and Mishum Nifas Adar Mar Simcha, but we do have to recognize that there was a patir of an Adam Gadol this week of Harav Sheftel Neuberger, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who was the Menayel of the Ner Yisrael Yeshiva in Baltimore. And Rav Sheftel was an extraordinary person. He's the son of the legendary Rabbi Herman Neuberger, who did so much in terms of rescue and bringing Yidden over, worked with Rabbi Moshe Sher to bring over Iranian Jews who came to Ner Yisrael and learned there after the revolution, 1979. And Rav Sheftel carried out in his father's path magnificently. He was an Adam Gadol Ad Me'od. He was a tremendous Ish Chacham V'Navain. As Rav Aaron Feldman said in his Hesped, he said when he entered a room, he dominated the room. He was a tall, impressive person with a lightning, quick mind, and he's somebody who will be very missed by Klal Yisrael. So Schusso Yagan Aleinu. Parshas Mishpatim is the type of parsha where you could say a shir in every pasuk. Every pasuk is almost one after another. There's so much there. But I'd like to just share with you two items, and we start with the pasuk in about Im Chavel Tachbol Per Chav Beis and pasuk Chav Hey. It says Im Chavel Tachbol Salmas Reacha. If you will take as a guarantee, means you lend somebody money. And as the pasuk before is in Kesef Tal Besami, you lend him money, and then you want to make sure he pays it back. So you always have something to guarantee it. So you take his salmas riach, you take his clothing, take a garment. So it says Ad Boa Shamash until the sun sets. Tishivenalo. When the sun sets, you have to give it back to him. Why? Says the pasuk. Why? Ki he ksusai, for it is covering. It's his covering levado. It's all he has. He's simla soy. It's his simla. Le'oirei for his skin. B'ma yishka. What will he sleep with? V'hoy ki yitzak elai, and he will cry out to me. V'shamati ki chanun ani, and I will listen because I am merciful. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us a very beautiful sensitivity. You're lending money to somebody, so somebody needs to borrow money. So by definition, doesn't have money as much as he needs. So you want to guarantee it, so he gives you his clothing, his night clothing. During the day he's wearing his day clothing, so he gives you his night clothing. You have to give it back to him. And the pasuk says, why? Because it's a covering for his skin, and if you don't give it back, he's going to cry out to me and I'm going to listen. And I heard from my father, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and he once told me a vort. And he pointed out that there's a very interesting thing. I don't think anybody notices this. When you listen to the laning, the Shabbos, listen carefully. Because it says like this, in Chavel Tachbol Salmas Riecha. It's spelled Sin, Lamed, Mem, right? Tough. Salmas, with a Shin Lamed. But if you take a look in the end of the pasuk, it says, in the next pasuk, Ksusai Levada, it's his ksus, his covering. Simlasai la'iroi, it's a simla. So, did you give him a salma or did you give him a simla? One says samach lamed mem, and the other one says samach mem lamed. So, what's the difference between the two? Sagt my father, mamsh beautiful zach. He says the word salma is a notricon. It means you break the word up and it means something. Shelma. What is it? It's nothing. A poor person has no money. He wears shmatas. He wears garnished. It's not worth a lot of money. It's a salma, shelma. But the pasuk says, but you should know, the rich person might say, what do I need to give it back to him? It's a salma, shelma, it was garnished. It's tattered, it's threadbare, it's not choshev beged. So the Torah powerful. Says the Torah, no. Simla soy la'iroi. For him it's a simla. And the word simla means shame law. And that's the difference between the two words. They both describe the same piece of clothing, right? The same garment. But one, to the rich person, he looks at the poor person garment. He says, Salma, Shalma, what is it? But the Torah tells you, rich man, don't look at it that way. You're making a big mistake. Remember that to him it's shemla, it's a simla. That's what he's got. That's what he's proud of. That's what he has. So never look down at him. Torah teaches an awesome lesson. Never look down at a person who has less than you, because you think that what does he have is garnished. And the Torah says it's a terrible mistake. You have to look at it, because if you don't, he'll cry out to me and I'm going to listen, and you're going to be punished. So we take a look and we think about not just money, not just riches, but we look at anything that we have more than another person. For example, you have Nebuch in kids' schools, they have cliques, right? So this one is in the clique, he's in the with other kids, popular and all that, and he looks down at the other kid who maybe comes from a poorer home, or maybe he's not as articulate, or and they make fun of him. Oy, 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 oy. That's something that poor person, Nebuch, goes to his very core, goes to his very essence, and he cries out to Hashem. And you thought you threw a good zog at somebody, you threw a good, knock at somebody, and you embarrassed them, or you did something, and you think, oh boy, am I a smart guy, and look, I made friends with my other friends, and all you did is you embarrassed this person. You don't know what's going on when they go home at night and they cry. That's the way people are. And unfortunately, we're not recognizing that. I told over once a Maisa that somebody told me that somebody came over to him 50 years later and told about the pain that he had when somebody was mevazeh him as a kid. 50 years, he remembered his whole life. So as careful as we have to be with somebody who's poorer than us, not to look down at it. We have to think about it twice. Think about it. That person might not have what I have. They might have money that I have. They might not have family that I have. Whatever they have, less than me, never look down at it. Because the Torah tells you, for you it might be a salma, but to him it's a simla. You it might be shalma, to him it's shemla. And that's something, it's a lesson we have to learn as we think, as we talk, as we react, to be very, very careful with that. Because Hashem's going to listen to his pain, his cry. And as mature adults, I think we try at least our best to think of it. But children aren't so mature. And children can be very cruel to each other. And children can literally destroy each other for life with cruelty, with those tiny remarks, with looking down at somebody as the salma. It's something that we need to train our children. We need to point out to them that everyone, the same way we go nuts telling them, say thank you. The minute we hear them say something disparaging, we have to step in. But of course, in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that we're okay, right? That's always the problem. So it's something that I learned from my father, and it's something I have the schus to share every time we get to Parshas Mishpatim, because it means so much to me. And the pasuk ends, and the pasuk says, listen, because you're going to cry out to me. And I was thinking, there's so many other psukim that end with that. And there's another one a little bit earlier. If we take a look back in Perak Chaf Aleph, like pasuk Chaf Beis, Chaf Aleph before that, even the pasuk before that, it says Losan Almana v'Yasam. Be very careful with an Almana v'Yasam. And then it says all sorts of double lashonos. We darshan that all the time. If you will oppress them and really oppress them, I say ki im tzog yitzak elai, they will really cry out to me, because they'll cry out twice. They'll cry out once because you said something not nice, and they'll cry out to me a second time because they're feeling vulnerable and they feel they only have the Rebbeinu Shem to cry to. Shamesh metzakosam. I'm going to listen to that cry. And I was thinking, why is it always saying that? These are l'cher bein adam l'chaberes. But the Torah is telling us a very important lesson. There is no such thing as bein adam l'chavero solely, because every bein adam l'chavero is ultimately bein adam l'makam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens very carefully to every exchange we have with each other. He listens very carefully when somebody throws an almana out of her house, when he throws a yasam out, when he throws a yasam out of a class, or a yasam out of a school, Rachman l'slan chas v'shalom. Every time that happens, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching everyone, and he's watching. And if they cry out, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I am listening. So we have to understand that sometimes we separate the two. There's a famous story with Rabbi Akiva Eger. Rabbi Akiva Eger once went to a shul and he saw an Alta Yid and he was davening with such kavanah. Oh, Mom is so beautiful. And he intended to go over after davening. He said, how do you daven so beautifully with such kavanah? And then came laning, and the man got an aliyah that he didn't feel was appropriate to him. So did he berate the gabbai? He took him apart. How dare you? I'm a chashuv person. How dare you give me an aliyah that doesn't pass for me? Whatever he said to him. So Rabbi Akiva Eger was flummoxed. How is this possible? Is this man a tzaddik? Davens like a tzaddik. It's all fake, a ride. It seemed like that. It seemed real. And on the other hand, he's screaming at somebody to give him proper kavod. So he asked him. He said, "Are you a hypocrite? Is this hypocrisy? Or explain this to me." So he says, "No, of course not." He says, "Of course I'm machniya myself to the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom is, we can't even conceive his greatness. Of course I'm machniya myself. What am I? I'm just a regular boss of a dome. But that guy, he shouldn't get a better aliyah than me. Who is he?" So he made the classic mistake of separating bein adam l'chavero, bein adam l'makam. Every interaction bein adam l'chavero is being watched by makam. And there's a bein adam l'makam aspect of it as well. And maybe ultimately is bein adam l'chavero. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is intervening in every bein adam l'chavero interaction when one side oppresses another side. It's something that we have to be so careful about and make sure that never happens. And I think a part of the reason is because we tend to think, especially, why do we oppress other people? Why do we say nasty things? Because there's a feeling of superiority that we're better and we're going to last forever. And our superiority, if we're rich, we're going to be rich forever. If we're young, we're going to be young forever. If we're going to be handsome, we're going to be handsome forever. Everything we think is forever. Well, I want to tell you something. This morning I met Yedidi Alan Proctor, Shlita, and he told me something interesting. He said he used to go in Times Square, famous Times Square, and over there was a big billboard, gigantic, how these 10-story high billboards, it said, Times Square, the center of the universe. And for many years, he said, Azad Gaiva, you think you're going to be there forever? Right? You think you're like the Titanic. With the Titanic, when it launched, it said, one of the commentators said, even God can't sink the Titanic. And now you go back, what the COVID has done is taught a lesson in humility to everybody, even Times Square. I would have the schus of waiting for the bus with other Heilige Yidden, sometimes the Muncie bus, and it used to be packed, you couldn't walk on the street. And now it's windswept, as they say, Nebuch, it's like the ghost towns of the gold rush in the West, that they're all deserted after the people weren't there anymore. And they thought they were going to be there forever too. And Times Square thought it's going to be the center of the world forever. And it's not. In 1 year. What, 1 year? In 1 month, 1 week, it went from being the busiest place in the world to almost empty. And that's what the people who oppress other people think. They think they're going to be there forever. They're going to be in the power position forever. They can oppress the other person forever. Im chabel tachbol. It's their salma. They don't care. People don't realize it, that they're not going to be there forever. The power is not going to be there forever. I remember when I was a child, there was somebody in town who people were very, very afraid of, was considered to be a very tough person. And then somebody met them when they were much older. And they were like a little old person, nice, wizened old person, very geschmack. Because time changes people. And no one should ever think that they're forever. The Rebbeinu Shalom is there forever. And the Rebbeinu Shalom is looking at us in each stage of our life. And he's saying to us, how are you going to behave at each stage of your life? How are you going to be? And when you're in the young and wealthy and hands, all the milas, are you going to behave with sensitivity toward other people? Are you going to realize that their salmas, they're similar? Or are you going to behave with an arrogance because you have the advantage? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzok Yitzhak Elai. You should know, like they used to say, don't start it with me, my big brother's going to come after you. So the poor person, the almana, the yasam, they have the Rebbeinu Shem on their side. When you do something, remember that. The Rebbeinu Shem is always there. Halavai, we should be sensitive to the needs of others, we should be sensitive to the frailties of others, and we should be sensitive to ourselves as well. And we should always know that the Rebbeinu Shem is there for us. The Rebbeinu Shem is listening. And just like if we cry out to the Rebbeinu Shem, Tzok Yitzhak Elai, Hashem says, I listen to cries. The Yitzhak Gal Hashem, He's waiting for us to cry out. Hashem should help us in the time of tzara, in the time of difficulty. In the Eretz Hashem, we should krich out of it and not go back to where we were. That's we always say, the Bali Moser say, when you go through a tzara, you don't want to go back. You want to go back to a place where you learn from the tzara. You became a better person, so we don't want to go back. I take it back. We want to go forward. And we're going to forward, become better people, use everything that we learned over the past year to become better people, to become more sensitive people, to realize the frailty of people, and then Yetz Hashem, cry out to the Rebbeinu Shem, and the Rebbeinu Shem will listen to us. So now we can say, a freilich and oder, b'shenichnas oder marben b'simcha, coming to oder, marben, I heard a pshat, marben means you get, like a person's happy, they throw out their arms with simcha, they become bigger. We should all be zeicha to become bigger through the simchas other, and Klal Yisrael should only have simcha, and more simcha from now on. And get in Shabbos.